Dude, I'm so glad I moved from Mumbai to Pune. Not just because of the awesome weather, but also because in a city like Pune, these kind of cars make so much sense. Electrics, you can save so much money.
Yeah, exactly. So even these entry-level EVs, which don't exactly qualify as long range, make a lot of sense here.
Absolutely right. In fact, which is what makes this city such a wonderful place to test out these two EVs and find out which is the better buy out of these two, even if they are not from the same segment. Why is the Comet here?
Guys, we should include this one in this comparo as well.
For what? They're not even in the same segment. That's like a soapbox on wheels.
What are you saying? It's just unconventional looking, and honestly, if you think these two are city EVs, I think this can do everything that those two cars can.
Does it?
Yeah, let's just find out.
The MG Comet is clearly the smallest car of the lot, but the quirky yet youthful design is likely to appeal to a wide audience who are purely looking at the practicality of having four wheels over two for their daily commutes.
A nano EV would have been very much like the Comet if it existed in today's times, a microcar. But it's the more conventional and arguably more practical Tiago, which is the smallest Tata EV you can buy at the moment. It looks exactly like the Tiago hatch, save for the blue accents, the EV badges and aero wheels. All of which are subtle additions that don't hamper the otherwise handsome design of the car.
The eC3 takes a midway approach between the other two design themes. It's quirky, typically French, and goes with a tall boy form factor. The lack of projector lamps like the Tiago or the alloy wheels being an optional extra quickly established the no-frills approach taken by the Citroën. The longer wheelbase accommodates the largest battery pack in the segment without compromising much on the ground clearance, while the tall boy design packs more space than the rivals. And it works. The knee room is actually quite good. The headroom is quite nice too. However, because the batteries are in the floor and this wasn't a born EV, the floor is slightly high, which means that you are either sitting in an awkward position like this or in a knees up position, so the under thigh support is always compromised. As for the window, nice big windows, you get a good view outside of the windows as well. It's a nice airy feel to the cabin. For the windows, however, the switches are placed in a rather inconvenient manner, so are the two USB-A ports, and you do also get a small cup holder. As for the seats, because you only get two squabs as headrests, this space is good enough and safe enough only for two adults and a kid.
Now in terms of sheer cabin space, yes, the Tiago EV is smaller than the Citroën eC3, but the split battery arrangement again shows its advantages here. For example, in terms of space, the Tiago EV is really not that much different from the ICE version of the Tiago. So you have almost the same amount of knee room and leg room. As you can see, this seat is set to my driving position, and yeah, there's a good amount of headroom as well for me. And yeah, to be fair, you won't be seating more than 4 people here anyway for most of the time, considering you have somewhat of a hump here and only a lap belt and no headrest here. So for that purpose, it really does do the job, and this light cabin, this dual tone finish does give it quite an airy feel. But yeah, we would have liked a few more amenities here, mainly an AC vent and charge ports. You only have a 12-volt socket here and just one in front. So aside from that, for a family of 4, the Tiago EV perfectly does the job.
Getting into the Comet's rear seat is akin to getting into a 2+2 sports coupe. It's even got sporty looking bucket seats up front. But once you do manage to get in,
Honestly, I don't feel this is the best place to sit amongst the three hatchbacks. Gajanan is over 6 feet tall, and the seat has been pushed back to its absolute limit, and still it doesn't look like Gajanan either is comfortable, and none of the taller drivers would be comfortable either. So I think this is a good enough space for kids.
did you just say kids? Kids have to be in a child seat. Try getting this in. This doesn't even fit in. How are you going to get it back in there?
With no ISOFIX child seat mounts and no rear doors, the child seat has to be attached to the front seat using a seat belt. The Tiago EV and the eC3, on the other hand, give the child seat a safer spot on the rear bench, but these two don't get ISOFIX mounts.
More practical challenges arise when you need to carry luggage. More practical problems arise because in a place like Pune, on a Thursday, which is today, there's no electricity, which means you cannot get the cars washed, so excuse the dirty cars, which also means that it does pose challenges when it comes to charging these vehicles. But that's not the case with every city in India. It's getting better. But for now, let's find out which one of these cars will be able to take all this luggage so that the family can go on a road trip. Let's begin with the Tiago EV. So the Tiago, you need to remove the parcel shelf, and because it can't fit anywhere in the boot, you will have to leave it behind. Once you do, a medium-sized suitcase and a small-sized suitcase can go in here without really hampering your rear view vision. The big suitcase is not going to fit at all. You also have this little bag for your charging equipment. You can choose to leave this behind because this is the AC charger. This one supports DC charging, so you can always charge it at a public charging station. But if you want to carry it with you for safety's sake, there is enough space for that too, and maybe also a small backpack or something can go in there. The C3, on the other hand, shows its size advantage right here because the big suitcase can easily fit in here. The smaller one goes right next to it, and the medium-sized one goes on top. And you still get to keep your parcel shelf, so in case you have to use it for something, you can. So in terms of absolute boot space, I think this is going to be better, unless Sohini somehow is able to trump this with the Comet. On to you, Sohini.
I think you feel you have an advantage, Rohit, but let me show you one thing. I don't think I will be traveling with too many people anyway.
Sure. So should I give you the smallest one then? Because I clearly don't see.
I can fit all three of them, and I'll show you why. I can drop these seats, and I have just as much space as either of these cars for both. Come on, show me. On the biggest one first. Okay, here's the second one, and I'm sure this third one will go in as well. There you go. No problem whatsoever.
In fact, she has room for more luggage. Which is fair, but with the Comet, you need to use smaller bottles and coffee cups. And the USB ports are hard to reach, and there are no proper places to keep your phone.
Oh please, there's plenty of storage space in the door pockets of this car, and what I really like about it is that I can fit such cute pouches which can store my phone in the hook that has been provided by MG. It suddenly goes with the Christmassy theme inside this car.
Which is true, there is a sense of occasion to the cabin of the Comet, although the ergonomics aren't the best. The steering mounted switches are slow to respond, the audio from the tiny speakers sounds tinny, the inside rearview mirror robs visibility for taller drivers, and the front seat lacks comfortable cushioning and under-thigh support.
Honestly, if your commutes are not too long, the comfort is not too bad in this car. And I really love the visibility of the Comet, especially while driving in the city traffic. It's so good that you could be hooning around with the same accuracy as a rickshaw rider. That also means that people on the outside can see what's happening inside the cabin. They can see what music you're listening to. They can also see what kind of colors that you're wearing. And since you're sitting so tall, they can also see if your legs are waxed or not. Sorry. But anyway, the infotainment is nice. I like the touchscreen performance. The instrumentation is quite nice too, though it could do with a better UI. And it could also show you the navigation data right there. It would have been so convenient, especially when they've gone into so much detail that even the tail lights are animated, the doors are animated when that's happening all around the car. You can see it right there. How cool is that?
Now the large screen and wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay connection in the Comet definitely leaves you wanting for a better touchscreen in the Tiago EV. But that's really the only way you realize that this hatchback has been around for a while. Because other than that, the design itself is quite handsome, especially with this two-tone finish. You have great visibility out for drivers of all sizes. And yeah, these buttons, they feel quite tactile to use. So overall, it's quite a conventional but a very well-executed cabin.
Like its exterior, even the cabin of the eC3 is a bit of a mixed bag. The monochrome instrumentation looks a decade old. If you want to see the range, you have to guess the battery percentage from the icon, and the rearview mirrors have adjustment stalks from the 90s. And that is quite a bit of reach and sometimes quite painful to adjust as well. You do, however, get a large screen. It also sits at a very safe position. It's easy to read, etc. You can also get wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with it. So you get those kind of conveniences. But then you still don't get a reversing camera, which is a bit of a pity, especially with those kind of wing mirrors. Now, in terms of the overall design, in terms of all the equipment that it offers, yes, it has some hits and misses. But when you compare it back to back with the Tiago EV, that one seems to have a more well-rounded package, a more polished feel to its dashboard. Even the seats feel a lot more comfortable in terms of their cushioning or in terms of the way they accommodate the driver or the passenger. And this is with a car that's half a size smaller. So when the punch comes out in an electric avatar, the eC3 might actually have a hard time. But until then, the Citroën eC3 with its larger battery pack will continue to offer better range. And the better torque output offers a better punch. Now, this electric powertrain in the eC3 doesn't really get too many driving modes. There is an eco switch right next to the drive selector. However, it doesn't really seem to do much, at least at city speeds. These are primarily going to be city vehicles, and at city speeds you are usually hovering in that eco zone. So you don't really need an eco mode for that. Even if you engage it, you don't really feel much of a difference, neither to the actual range or to the drivability of it. It's only on the highway where the eco mode will have a marginal impact, marginally dull down the throttle response, but even that is very difficult to notice. Whether you're driving in the city or winding roads, mountain roads, etc., one feature that could have probably helped is different regen modes. Of course, there is regen on this car, but out of the box, it is not too strong. There's a positive and a negative side to this. The pro is that because it doesn't feel too strong, the car feels very natural to drive, like a fossil fuel car, which is a very good thing. A lot of people will find this very easy to drive. The learning curve is almost negligible. The downside to it is, maybe around winding roads like these, that regen could have helped simulate the effects of a strong engine braking performance, which you do not get. And in the city environment, you could have used a higher regen or a stronger regen mode to have some sort of a single pedal driving that you want with an electric vehicle, which is possible with the Tiago EV, but not with the eC3. Now, compared to the length or the overhangs of the Comet, this one is actually a much bigger car. But if you were to only compare it to the Tiago and you want that elevated view of the road, this is the one that's going to give it to you. You get the view of the bulges of the bonnet, so getting a judgment of the front of the vehicle is not a problem at all. And even despite this being a slightly longer car, getting a judgment of all the four corners is not a problem at all. So for that elevated view of the road, this is the one that you want to choose.
Now the Tiago EV with its 75 PS is the most powerful car here. It's slightly down on torque to the eC3, but what you do notice that in the D mode, power delivery is quite measured. While it's perfectly fine for, say, crawling in traffic or to just close in on that gap, a faster overtake, for that you will find it much easier to just switch it into the S mode, but it becomes a lot more effortless, and where you finally get that crisp, immediate power delivery that you expect from an EV. That said, the D mode should be more than useful in most other situations, but a big differentiator for the Tiago EV with the other cars here is that it's the only one here with regen modes. Now we find that the middle regen level is the most natural. It's probably the one you'll use most of the time. It slows the Tiago EV down much like you would find in, say, engine braking in an ICE car. So that feels the most natural. But when you do switch it to that highest of the three regen modes, it slows right down to a crawl. There's no one pedal driving, so you will still have to use the brake yourself, but it slows down to quite a convenient crawl. And in stop-go traffic, it does become very easy to drive the Tiago EV. Speaking of traffic, we would have liked to have seen maybe the edges of the bonnet a bit better. You can see it in the eC3, you can't in this one. And maybe this dial, this rotary selector, we've always said that it's not that great to use in every Tata car that we drive, and that really ought to have been changed by now, but it's the same one, so you find yourself fiddling around with the gears more often than not.
The rotary dial in the Tiago is just as iffy as the rocker switch drive selector in the Citroën eC3, which needs 2 firm pushes of the switch and 1 firm push of the brake pedal to switch between the forward and the reverse gears, often getting stuck at neutral and taking multiple attempts. These selectors get even more cumbersome while taking 3-point turns, tight parking spaces, U-turns, etc. The rotary dial in the Comet is far more precise, and you will seldom do 3-point turns with this cute, pint-sized car, thanks to its tiny turning radius, making it perfect for crowded cities.
What I really like about the MG Comet while driving in the city is a combination of great power, torque, its small dimensions, and also this higher seating position, which makes for great visibility when you're zipping through traffic, in and out especially. And in a city like Pune, which honestly the lane discipline is quite questionable, makes a big difference. It's also great for a city like Mumbai for the by-lanes, the narrow by-lanes of say Bandra or Baikala, and parking this one is really completely stress-free.
The Comet also gets 3 driving modes, and the Eco mode works best because it maximizes range without compromising too much on power delivery or the throttle response. Driving in Eco mode gave us a range of around 185 kilometers, but to keep this a level playing field, the boys in the other 2 hatchbacks kept all cars in their normal modes and the regen in the Tiago at its standard position. And this is how the numbers turned out. With the Comet offering the most kilometers per kilowatt hour, but its smaller battery size means the range is slightly lower. So keep the highway runs in check, not only for the range but also because it isn't in its comfort zone.
While we have brought the MG Comet on the highway, this is not a highway car. Any speed above 70 kilometers per hour feels quite unnerving.
The Tiago and the eC3, on the other hand, don't fret on the highway and feel as natural and stable as any standard hatchback. And talking about safety, let's also take a look at how these 3 match up in terms of the safety features that they offer.
Despite the smaller wheels and tires and also the tiny suspension travel, the ride quality on this Comet is excellent, especially over poor roads and also speed breakers, but you have to be a little more mindful of deeper potholes.
I was a little worried that while drivability may not take a hit, considering how Citroën would tune this car, I was worried that the ride quality might just take a hit when they made the transition from the fossil fuel version or the variant to the electric variant with all these batteries in the floor and putting more weight on the suspension, etc. But surprisingly, whether you're driving in the city, the typical potholes, etc., or driving on B roads which have some poor road conditions, not a problem at all. Ride quality still remains a very important factor for this little Citroën, and it is in fact still one of the best in the category. At least between these 3 cars, if I wanted a car for bad roads, I would definitely choose this one. That's how good the ride quality is.
Now as for the ride and handling package of the Tiago EV, again it's what you've come to expect from these Tata EVs. So the steering is not very light but also not very cumbersome, so it's quite easy to use in traffic. You don't feel tired all that much. And then say on a winding road where you want that connection, where you want that slight bit of feel and precision, it's also got that. So you feel confident maybe driving this car a bit faster. You're never second guessing really what the car is doing, which is great, especially if you are a new driver. And as for the way it handles, the way it covers over bumps and potholes, while you do feel them, they're never jarring or they never make you feel too uncomfortable, which is a great trait. And then when the road smoothens out, it's really quite smooth sailing. You notice that there's quite a bit of composure here. And the Tiago EV is actually quite fun to drive on a winding mountain road such as the one we're on right now.
Well, just like the highway, on hilly sections and bends like these, the Comet is not very confidence inspiring. You might want to keep that enthusiasm in check. It's perfect for those city runabouts and intersections, but the moment you find hilly sections and switchbacks, you do feel that those smaller tires will curb your enthusiasm for pushing this at the speeds that you would want to.
Now, one major difference between the battery types in the Tiago versus the eC3 is that one is liquid cooled, this one is air cooled. Now, I'm not sure exactly how the venting has been designed for the floor and how the air is being fed to the batteries to cool them down efficiently. but I'm a little worried about how this behaves because I've not got a clear answer from Citroën on this. I don't know how this behaves in a waterlogging situation. If there is water up to, say, the lug nut of the vehicle, I don't know if the efficiency of the cooling or the cooling itself is going to be hampered in some way. So that is one thing that I'm worried about. The other thing, because of its air cooling, is that if the batteries are running hot, especially during the summers, if you've been driving a lot in tight city traffic, if the batteries are running hot, the charging efficiency also goes down. So if you were to take these hot batteries in this car and go to a charging station, we have seen the charging speed drop to as low as 6 kilowatts. This supports up to 30 kilowatts, but it could go down to 6 kilowatts depending on the temperature of the batteries. So your charging times could actually vary than what's advertised. If all systems are running optimally, the eC3 and the Tiago will recharge fully in an hour because they do support DC fast charging. The Comet, on the other hand, has AC charging only, which means 5 to 7 hours on a home charger. And finding reliable AC chargers on a road trip is more challenging than the DC charging solutions. Again highlighting that this is strictly a city car in our opinion, and therefore a good choice only if you are looking for a city EV, mostly as a second or a third car in your garage. If you are going to have a single car garage though, the Tiago and the eC3 would be the more versatile options. They offer most of the niceties of a standard hatchback with the low-cost commutes of an EV. And if every inch of available space is important for you, the eC3 would be the one to choose because it's simply more spacious. Otherwise, the Tiago EV comes across as the more well-rounded package and would be the one that we would choose as the winner of this test. Let us know, what do you think?